Hey guys, I'm Combat Survivor here. There's a video conversation going around. Unfortunately, YouTube is not the greatest platform for this kind of discourse. So it's difficult to discern which videos came before what other videos. I've tried to watch as many of them involved as I can. This is a conversation that kicked off from a video put up by Southern Prepper 1. thehossusmc left a comment. Someone replied. Hoss made a video reply explaining himself. Americangamefowl hopped in. I think Ironhead 41 may have hopped into this discussion as well. So it's kind of confusing because you can't really track down a linear course of discussion on this, but I think I have an idea of where everybody stands on this. So if I'm incorrect, if I'm assuming a different position than you've actually presented, then I apologize. Let me know, and I'll do another video about it. The first thing I want to say is, well, I do think that there's a decent solution to this thing. The first thing I want to say is, it's pretty disturbing how very quickly people who are even contemplating this kind of situation, this kind of scenario, hop to things that are on the road towards tyranny. Dissecting the value of someone's ability to vote, assigning a value to how many votes they can get, or using what someone contributed to directly represent other things is, in my opinion, that's pretty disturbing. So I'm not gonna go too far into that, but I think it's certainly a window into the nature of men in general and the people speaking specifically, what their real view is. Anything that leads down the road to tyranny or communism or socialism, anything that leads away from freedom and individual determination, in my opinion, is something that should be avoided like the plague that it is. As for back to the solution, now the original scenario set up by Southern Prepper 1 is not really what was being tossed around. So it kind of deviated a little bit, but Southern Prepper 1's original scenario is someone died in the community and left a commodity to the community that held value. And his, I guess, posited question was, how do you determine how this is divided down? I think, I've made a couple of videos about doing a free market, setting up a marketplace. And I think that's truly the solution in all of these situations. It's the answer to every single video that I've seen about this is simply using a free market. Rather than valuing somebody's vote on the amount of contribution that, in your opinion, they've given to the community, simply give everybody a vote towards leadership. That's what a republic is. The leaders in your community are going to be agreed upon, and that leadership may change once things settle down a little bit. But telling someone, okay, I'm a prepper, I have some stuff put up, so I get more votes than somebody else in the community towards our leadership, that simply isn't how the American system is set up. The rule of law still counts here. If I'm setting up the safe zone, the United States Constitution is still the rule of law. That means one person gets one vote, end of story. That means I do not have the power to determine what somebody else does or does not do with their property, just as much as they don't have the authority to make those decisions for my property. Now, when you get into Southern Prepper 1 scenario where something is left to the community, that is why you have a leadership in place. You cede anything that goes to the community is ceded to the leadership of those people who have been put into positions of authority by the community. That means those in power. This is why democracy is not good. A republic is what is needed. Democracy is basically mob rule. This is why you need representation. You need people, cool-headed, level-headed individuals to be able to sit down and assess these situations. For instance, in Southern Prepper 1 scenario, excuse me, he kind of presented it such that there were people in charge of different things. The doctor was in charge of medical decisions. The guy in charge of security was in charge of everything that had to do with weaponry, et cetera, so on and so forth. That's a great setup so long as it's clear that there is a final authority. There needs to be a president. There needs to be somebody who can make the final decision. Whether that is an individual or it's put to a vote, and all of your little department heads that you've set up in this community all get together and have a vote. But one person should not have a higher vote than the other people. This is all basing off of the reality that most people are going to vote for someone they think is going to be a good leader. So if you guys have put together this little leadership council, and you have a doctor, and you have, some medical officer, a security officer, a provisions officer who's in charge of food distribution, and whatever that is. If the decision that comes down to, like your scenario, something that's important to the entire community, it's important to food, it's important to security, and it's important to medical, then it would be assumed that the other people, like in our Congress, the hijacked piece of crap it is right now, but that those people would step forward and give their opinion. And at that point, checks and balances, you then take a vote among the leadership on what's going to get done with this item, this commodity, in this scenario, with this choice, whatever it is. Democracy is mob rule. You elect a leadership for a specific period of time, and that leadership then takes over the role and the responsibility of dealing with anything that falls into what you would consider community property. Some of you guys were saying things like, somebody who all they brought is labor should get this vote or shouldn't get that vote. I disagree completely. The leadership, those who are in charge, are going to take these things into consideration. The guy who basically has brought nothing and has been a leech off the system, the leadership is certainly going to hear his opinion on it, depending on how loudly he screams it. But that doesn't mean they're going to think that's what's best for the community. This is why we put a leadership in place, folks. This is why we put a structure in place. At first, those that are in charge are going to be those that are taking care of security, because that's what took precedence. Things are going to settle down. I don't know how long it's going to take. None of us do. But if this ever does happen, things will settle down. We will have a leadership put in place. At which point, those who are in a position of power have the choice of either attempting to become a tyrant or actually having elections. I think most people in America would probably rather have elections and elect a leadership. How this is done is going to have to be broken down to the size of your community, but at the end of the day, deciding that one person is worth anything other than one vote is taking the first step towards tyranny. Deciding that anyone else gets to choose what happens to another person's personal property, down that road lies communism. None of these things have ever worked in the history of man. You've never had a happy population that didn't eventually rise up and hang or slit the throats of a bunch of people under a tyrannical system. And never has communism worked either. People wind up starving to death and waiting in bread lines. This stuff doesn't work. It's never worked. It's never gonna work. So moving towards these things in a breakdown situation is setting yourself up for failure. It's setting your community up for failure. I may have misunderstood some of the stuff. Like I said, it was difficult to determine what order these videos should be watched in, and how this conversation flowed exactly. but I think I have a good idea of it. I disagree that only property owners or landowners should be allowed to vote. The leadership, as long as you are smart enough to set your process up for election in such a way that you're not going to get a skewed leadership that skews one way or the other. And as long as you put a leadership in place that does not feel that they have the authority to infringe on the individual determination of others, you're not going to have any problems. You open a marketplace, whatever level that marketplace is, whether it's an actual physical place where people are going to trade things, or it's something like, I have a garden and I can produce more food in my garden than I can consume. So I'm going to trade this food. However, in order to grow this food, I need somebody to come work this garden with me X amount of hours during the season. Well, now the market is determining, what do I pay this person? I'm going to make this much on the food that I believe I'm going to grow. I need to pay this person to come help me. It's free market. If that laborer cannot work and earn enough from his labor to continue his survival, then he's going to move on. He's going to leave the community. He's going to go somewhere else. When you have things like a doctor who is performing a medical service for basically the entirety of the community, well, again, this goes back to free market. Rather than paying that doctor to just sit at home and handle things, the community comes together and they provide for this doctor completely. You don't have to do that. Whenever someone goes to that doctor for any kind of care, you compensate him. It's the market. You pay for things. An honest day's pay for an honest day's work. I know it's a concept that has basically disappeared in the United States in current generations, but that is what works. Allow people to assign, rather than trying to determine definitively the value of this so that you can split it up for everybody in the community. Well, I own this. The value of this is determined by what someone is willing to pay for it. End of story. Whether it's a physical item, whether it's labor, whether it's a skill, whether it's teaching, whatever it is. If you have a teacher in your community that is going to be teaching, 8 kids in your community, they're going to do classes every day. Well, the parents of those children get to determine the value of that education. Well, that teacher is dedicating X amount of time, and the teacher can say, well, look, if you're going to add a kid to this, I'm going to need this from you. I need this much food every week so that I can continue eating and feeding my family, etc., etc. I think trying to predetermine and lock values in for things like this now is a mistake. I think everybody needs to, in my opinion, shift gears, change lanes, and move over to the mindset of allowing the market to flow values on everything as it's needed and as that commodity is more or less available. Ammunition, of course, is going to be worth, it's going to be the currency most likely, at least in the short term. But what's the value of that ammunition is exactly how much. Okay, how many bullets are you willing to pay me for this? You want it? How many bullets? Predetermining that and saying, okay, well, everybody who has one of these, we think it's worth 3 bullets. So everyone who has one, if you trade it, that's what it's worth, 3 bullets. Effectively, that's silly. I think everybody can see that's silly. Well, effectively, that's what you're doing when you start trying to divide up people's votes. You start trying to determine who can say what gets done with someone else's property. Community property goes into the stewardship of the leadership that has been placed. That's it. It's that simple. The market decides. The leadership can now say, this fuel is best used, in our opinion, to run the tractors in the spring, to run a recon truck that can go do X and Y mission, and the rest of it will be put back with some more stabilizer in it, to be determined later on into the quote slush fund for the community. This seems pretty clear to me, but maybe I'm seeing it too simplistically, or maybe I'm not understanding some stuff. So if you guys see it differently, let me know, and if I misrepresented anything any of you may have said, please let me know. I don't even know. I'm going to set this as response because you can only do it to one video. So I guess I'll do it to Southern Preppers. So Urban Combat Survivor, signing off.